Welcome back to Empire Pulse, the channel that never sleeps. As the war in the Middle East continues unabated, the world has just experienced 14 days of artificial silence, a deadly, suffocating silence, the kind that appears just before a tsunami strikes. While diplomats in Washington and Tel Aviv were still intoxicated by the fumes of power and toying with meaningless ceasefire drafts at drinking parties, deep beneath Thrawn's limestone fortresses, Iran's war machine had already recovered and completed its lightning-fast reloading. Every missile silo, every mobile launcher, every secret factory was operating at full capacity. The 2 weeks of so-called ceasefire were never a true peace. It was merely a carefully calculated ploy, a brilliant strategic move to allow the Axis powers time to sharpen their weapons while Trump spouted empty threats on Twitter and Netanyahu flaunted his invincible Iron Dome air defense system on television. But time ran out, the ceasefire had ended, and at that very moment, the Supreme Leader gave the order. Iran launched a devastating preemptive strike that would be remembered for centuries, not only against Israel, but directly against the heart of American power in the Middle East. Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest and most important American military base in the entire region, the headquarters of CENTCOM. Hundreds of FOD hypersonic Dinosaur King missiles screaming at Mach 15 wrapped in plasma shields that blind every radar have already torn through the sky. Swarms of thousands of intelligent suicide drones, cheap as motorcycles, but deadly as guided artillery, are flooding the airspace like a biblical plague of locusts. Right now, as you watch this video, the runways at Al Udeid are being torn apart. American F-35s and command aircraft are burning on the ground. The proud symbol of U.S. dominance in the Gulf is turning into a blazing inferno. Netanyahu is on his knees begging for help. Trump, the man who once promised to crush Iran with an iron fist, is reportedly in panic mode, desperately trying to stop the war he helped provoke. This is not speculation. This is history unfolding in real time. In this special 45-minute report, we will dissect every layer of Iran's breathtaking preemptive masterclass, how they turned Trump's 14-day gift into a loaded spring ready to smash the old order, the terrifying technology behind the FOD hypersonic beasts, the overwhelming drone swarm tactics that broke both Israeli and American air defenses, and the total collapse of the so-called invincible Western shield. Before we dive deep, if you want unfiltered truth about power, strategy, and who is really running the Middle East now, smash that like button, subscribe to Trump Power Watch, and turn on notifications because tonight, the map of the Middle East is being redrawn in fire. The storm has begun and the so-called superpower is already blinking. Far beneath the ancient limestone mountains of Iran, in a vast labyrinth of secret cities carved into solid rock, the Islamic Republic's war machine didn't just recover, it exploded back to life with terrifying speed and fury. 14 days, only 14 days of this so-called ceasefire gift from Donald Trump and transformed that precious time into the most explosive military resurrection modern warfare has ever witnessed. This was never weakness. This was never surrender. This was cold, calculated genius. While American satellites scanned empty desert sands and Western analysts smugly declared Iran exhausted, the Supreme Leader forces were operating at 300% capacity inside mountain fortresses that no spy in the sky could truly touch. Hidden factories hummed like angry hornets. Underground highways carried thousands of solid fuel engines, hypersonic warheads, and deadly new guidance systems through the darkness. Iran's missile cities are not warehouses. They are living, breathing beasts, decentralized, self-healing, impossible to kill. Every launcher Israel claimed to have destroyed was instantly replaced by 3 new mobile ghosts, faster, smarter, and deadlier than before. In just 336 hours, Iran doubled the density of launchers in critical zones and turned old weapons into intelligent predators. The upgrades were chilling. Iran's electronic warfare masters dissected every piece of American and Israeli technology they had shot down. They injected cutting-edge AI brains. They added optical eyes that laugh at GPS jamming. They wrapped warheads in plasma stealth coatings and gave them the ability to dance at Mach 15, changing direction like fighter jets in the final seconds of flight. Many of these awakened monsters were specifically programmed with the precise coordinates of Al Udeid Air Base, America's largest and most important military stronghold in the entire Middle East, the proud heart of CENTCOM. Trump thought he was being clever. He thought 14 days would cool Iran down. Instead, he handed his enemy the perfect window to reload every silo, fuel every fat hypersonic beast, and arm thousands of suicide drones with one single purpose: total devastation. And the psychological game? Masterful. Iran deliberately let just enough night convoys appear on satellite images, massive, menacing movements to make the Pentagon sweat in silence. The message was loud and clear. Watch us. The longer you wait, the more devastating our strike will become. This is Iran's true power. They don't rely on giant, easy-to-bomb factories. They have thousands of small hidden workshops buried inside mountains and civilian zones, a decentralized nervous system that no Pentagon supercompute can map or destroy. By the time the ceasefire clock hit zero, Iran's arsenal had not simply recovered. It had evolved into something apocalyptic. A coiled spring compressed to its absolute limit, ready to unleash hell on both Israel's airfields and America's crown jewel in Qatar. Donald Trump, the man who once boasted he would crush Iran with an iron fist, had just made the biggest strategic mistake of his life. He gave the lion time to sharpen its claws. The dragons were fully awake, the fuses were burning, and the old order was about to go up in flames. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let us talk about the man this channel is named after, Donald J. Trump, the so-called ultimate dealmaker, the self-proclaimed destroyer of ISIS, the president who once swore he would crush Iran with the strongest fist in history, froze right when the clock was ticking down on the ceasefire. When every intelligence report screamed that Iran was reloading at terrifying speed, Trump blinked. He blinked hard. Instead of striking first or backing Israel with real force, he rushed to extend the ceasefire by another 2 weeks. A desperate last-minute surrender disguised as strategic wisdom. This was not statesmanship. This was fear wearing a red tie. While Tran was turning those 14 days into a deadly weapons factory, Trump was sitting in the White House staring at reports that made even his most hawkish generals nervous. He realized something terrifying. The Middle East of 2026 was no longer the playground of 2020. Iran had evolved. Their missiles were smarter, their underground cities deeper, and their will to fight far stronger than Washington had ever imagined. Trump, the man who loves to brag about peace through strength, suddenly discovered that real strength comes with a terrifying price tag. He understood that launching a full-scale war now would turn the Persian Gulf into a sea of fire. American bases across the region, especially the crown jewel Udeid Air Base in Qatar, were sitting ducks for the hypersonic storm Iran was preparing. One wrong move, and thousands of U.S. troops could be coming home in body bags. But it wasn't just military fear, it was money. Trump, the businessman president, knows numbers better than anyone. A full-blown war would send oil prices through the roof. The global economy, already fragile, would collapse. His precious stock market, the one he constantly brags about, would crash harder than in 2008. So instead of being the strong man he claims to be, Trump chose to kick the can down the road and call it leadership. Even America's so-called Arab allies were begging him to back off. Saudi Arabia and the UAE sent secret messages dripping with panic. They didn't want to become the next targets. They knew that if America started a war, Iranian missiles and proxy forces would turn their oil fields and cities into smoking ruins within hours. The rich Gulf kingdoms, so used to hiding behind American protection, suddenly realized the shield was cracking. And what about Netanyahu? The Israeli prime minister was reportedly on the phone screaming for immediate American strikes, for more Iron Dome batteries, for anything to save face. But Trump left him hanging. He abandoned his closest ally in the region, choosing to protect his own political future instead. While Netanyahu's dream of total victory turned to ashes, Trump was busy calculating how to spin this failure on Truth Social. This hesitation was the ultimate betrayal of American power. By giving Iran those precious 14 days, Trump didn't buy peace. He bought a loaded gun pointed at America's own forehead. He handed the Islamic Republic the perfect window to perfect their strike on Udeid, to upgrade their fat hypersonic monsters, and to coordinate the greatest preemptive assault the Middle East has ever seen. Trump thought he was playing 4D chess. In reality, he walked straight into Iran's trap. He believed economic pressure and empty threats would make Thrawn kneel. Instead, Iran looked at America's hesitation and saw weakness. They saw an empire that talks tough, but is terrified of real war. The so-called Trump power that the world once feared has revealed itself as nothing more than loud tweets and strategic retreat. Because of this catastrophic blunder, Iran no longer felt it had to wait. They chose to strike first hard, fast, and without mercy. They decided to rewrite the rules of the game while Trump was still hesitating. The lions are no longer sleeping. They are beginning to hunt. And the man who promised to make America great again just handed the keys of the Middle East to the supreme leader of Iran. After decades of strategic patience, Iran has officially buried the old playbook. In the war rooms beneath Tehran, a radical new military doctrine was born, one with a terrifying name: preemptive strike for survival. This is not defense. This is not retaliation. This is total calculated annihilation launched before the enemy can even take a breath. For years, the world watched Iran absorb sanctions, assassinations, and threats with cold patience. But Trump's cowardly extension of the ceasefire was the final straw. Tran realized that waiting any longer meant certain death. In modern warfare, the side that strikes second is already dead, so Iran flipped the script completely. Instead of waiting for Israeli F-35s to appear on their radars or American carrier groups to position themselves, the supreme leader gave the order to strike first, decisively, overwhelmingly, and without hesitation. The targets were chosen with surgical precision: Israel's airfields, command centers, and energy infrastructure. And most importantly, the crown jewel of American power in the region, Udeid Air Base in Qatar. This was no random decision. Udeid is not just any base. It is the beating heart of CENTCOM, the command center from which America controls the entire Middle East. Home to over 10,000 American troops, dozens of F-35s, strategic bombers, and the most advanced command and control systems. Destroying it would blind America instantly. Iran spent every hour of Trump's gift preparing this masterstroke. Mobile launchers were moved into hidden positions. Communication networks were hardened against jamming. Thousands of FA hypersonic missiles were programmed with exact coordinates of Udeid's runways, fuel depots, radar arrays, and underground bunkers. At the same time, swarms of intelligent suicide drones were synchronized for a multi-act assault. This new doctrine is brutally simple: break the enemy's nervous system in the first hour. Destroy their ability to respond before they even understand what is happening. While Trump was still tweeting empty threats and Netanyahu was boasting about total victory, Iran had already turned the entire region into a kill zone. The beauty of this strategy lies in its asymmetry. Iran does not need to match America's Air Force or Israel's technology. They simply need to overwhelm them with sheer volume and speed. Cheap drones act as bait to exhaust expensive American and Israeli interceptors. Hypersonic FOD missiles slice through defenses like hot knives through butter. Precision-guided ballistic missiles rain down on hardened targets that no bunker can fully protect. By striking first, Iran seized the initiative. They forced both Israel and America into a reactive, panicked posture. No longer would Tehran sit and wait for the next sanctions package or the next assassination. From now on, any aggression would be met with immediate, devastating preemption. Trump's hesitation didn't calm the situation, it ignited it. His weakness convinced Iranian leaders that the so-called superpower was bluffing. The longer America delayed, the stronger Iran became. What Trump thought was clever diplomacy was in reality the final push that convinced Tran to abandon all restraint. This is the new reality in the Middle East. The era of American impunity is over. The era of Iranian preemptive power has begun. The supreme leader did not just give a military order, he declared a new law of survival. Strike first, strike hard, strike in ways the enemy cannot imagine. And that is exactly what happened when the clock struck zero. Hundreds of launchers opened fire simultaneously. The sky above the Gulf and the Levant turned black with missiles and drones. Udeid, once considered untouchable, was now in the crosshairs of history's most coordinated preemptive assault. The old rules are dead. A new law has been written in fire and steel. Then came the monster. When the clock struck zero and the ceasefire died, the sky above Iran split open with thunder that shook the earth itself. From hidden silos in Semnan and Isfahan, the beast awoke. Fada, the hypersonic dinosaur king, Iran's ultimate weapon of preemptive annihilation. This was not just another missile. This was evolutionary warfare. Traveling at Mach 15, 15 times the speed of sound, F does not fly. It dominates the atmosphere. As it tears through the sky, the intense friction turns its outer shell into a blazing plasma shield, a glowing fireball that blinds every radar system on Earth. American and Israeli satellites saw nothing but a ghost wrapped in fire. While Trump was still bragging about maximum pressure and Netanyahu was boasting about Iron Dome's invincibility, The first wave of Fata missiles roared toward their targets with cold, unstoppable fury. The primary target, Udeid Air Base in Qatar, America's largest and most important military installation in the Middle East, the beating heart of CENTCOM, the command center that controls every American operation across the entire region. Fata did not come alone. It came as the spearhead of judgment. These hypersonic monsters maneuver like living predators. In the terminal phase, at speeds that should make any turn impossible, Fata's advanced control thrusters kick in. They pull 90-degree turns at Mach 12+, laughing at every predictive algorithm in the Pentagon. American and Israeli interceptors fired desperately into empty sky, chasing ghosts that were never there. The impact was biblical. When the first F slammed into Udeid, the explosion was not just destructive, it was apocalyptic. Traveling at such insane velocity, the kinetic energy alone turned the warhead into a bunker-busting spear of pure physics. Reinforced concrete runways shattered like glass. Underground fuel depots erupted into towering fireballs hundreds of meters high. Hangars housing billion-dollar F-35s collapsed instantly, burying America's most advanced fighter jets in burning rubble. Command centers that once coordinated the entire Gulf were turned into smoking craters in seconds. Radar arrays that were supposed to protect the base melted under the sheer heat and shockwave. In less than 10 minutes, the crown jewel of American power in the Middle East was crippled beyond immediate repair. At the same time, other Fata missiles streaked toward Israel. Airfields that housed F-35 squadrons were torn apart. Deep underground bunkers, once considered safe, cracked under the sheer kinetic force. Israel's much-celebrated air defense network was revealed as expensive scrap metal against a weapon that operates on an entirely different plane of physics. Trump, watching the nightmare unfold from the White House, reportedly fell silent for the first time in years. The man who promised to obliterate Iran was now witnessing his greatest strategic nightmare in real time. Netanyahu, the self-proclaimed master of Middle East power, could only watch in horror as his dreams of regional dominance burned on live satellite feeds. This is the terror of Fata. It doesn't just destroy targets, it destroys confidence. It destroys the illusion that America and Israel control the skies. At Mach 15, with plasma stealth and terminal maneuverability, no current defense system on Earth was truly prepared. Iran had spent those 14 days Trump so generously gifted them wisely, perfecting this monster, loading it with the most advanced inertial guidance and infrared seekers and programming every important coordinate of all Udeid and Israeli air bases deep into its digital brain. The dinosaur king did not roar. It screamed across the heavens and delivered extinction. While the world was still processing the shock of the opening salvo, the second phase was already launching. Thousands upon thousands of intelligent suicide drones rising like a biblical plague, ready to finish what the hypersonic monsters had started. The FOD had opened the gates of hell. Now the swarm was coming to flood the battlefield. Right after the sky was torn apart by the screaming fat hypersonic monsters, Iran unleashed Phase 2, a nightmare that no military on Earth had ever prepared for. Not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands of intelligent suicide drones rose from hidden mobile launchers across Iran and its allied territories like a biblical plague of steel locust. This was the full-force swarm attack, the saturation hellfire that would break the back of both American and Israeli air defenses forever. This was not random chaos. This was orchestrated annihilation. Iran's new doctrine of preemptive strike for survival reached its terrifying peak. While the F-A Dinosaur King missiles punched holes through the most hardened targets at Udeid and Israeli air bases, the sky turned black with wave after wave of lethal drones, cheap, deadly, and terrifyingly smart. The first wave consisted of decoys, simple, low-cost UAVs designed to flood enemy radar screens. Their only mission, force America and Israel to waste their multi-million-dollar interceptors. And it worked perfectly. Patriot batteries at Udeid and Iron Dome systems in Israel began firing desperately into the night, lighting up the sky with expensive streaks of fire. Each drone shot down cost the West millions, while Iran lost nothing but pocket change. Then came the real killers. The second and third waves were Shahed 136B variants upgraded with swarm intelligence. These drones could communicate with each other in real time. If one was destroyed, the others instantly redistributed targets, found weak spots in the defense grid, and adapted like a living organism. They flew extremely low, hugging the terrain, slipping through radar dead zones. Their engines sounded like 1,000 angry hornets descending upon the battlefield. Udeid Air Base, already bleeding from FOD strikes, now faced total overload. Thousands of drones swarmed its perimeter from multiple directions. Fuel depots that survived the initial hypersonic attack erupted in towering fireballs. Repair crews trying to save damaged F-35s were forced to run for cover as kamikaze drones slammed into hangars and command posts. The once mighty CENTCOM headquarters descended into chaos. Communication lines collapsed. Radar operators watched in horror as their screens filled with endless red dots. At the same time, coordinated attacks slammed into Israel from 3 directions: direct from Iran, from Hezbollah in the north, and from other resistance forces in the south. The sky over Tel Aviv and Israeli airfields became a deadly light show of exploding drones and desperate interceptors. Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow systems were pushed beyond their limits. The math was merciless. When you fire 1,000 cheap drones and the enemy only has 200 expensive missiles, simple subtraction decides the winner. 800 targets broke through. Runways that FOD had already damaged were completely cratered. Power stations exploded in spectacular fireballs, plunging entire regions into darkness. Fuel storage facilities at Israeli bases turned into raging infernos. The psychological effect was devastating. Israeli civilians huddled in bomb shelters as the sky rained fire. Soldiers who once believed in their technological superiority now faced the horrifying reality that their expensive shields had failed. Trump, watching the live feeds from the White House, reportedly slammed his fist in rage and disbelief. The man who loved to tweet, "We have the greatest military in the world," was now witnessing that same military being humiliated by cheap Iranian drones in sheer tactical brilliance. Netanyahu's government, which had promised its people total security, was collapsing in real time. This was the genius of Iran's saturation strategy. They didn't try to match American technology dollar for dollar. They simply flooded the battlefield with volume, intelligence, and relentless pressure. Every million-dollar American interceptor wasted on a $20,000 drone was a strategic victory for Tehran. Every hole punched into defense grid allowed the next more lethal wave to penetrate deeper. The swarm did not stop. Wave after wave kept coming, coordinated, intelligent, and merciless. Drones attacked radar installations, command vehicles, troop concentrations, and critical infrastructure. Within hours, both Alawad and major Israeli military centers were drowning in fire and smoke. The old era of Western air dominance died that night. The age of the drone swarm had begun. Iran had proven once again that willpower, numbers, and tactical creativity can defeat even the most expensive technology when used with absolute determination. Trump's hesitation gave them the time. Iran's leaders turned that time into total battlefield superiority. The sky belonged to Tehran. Now the sky had become hell itself. What began with the thunder of Fatah hypersonic monsters and escalated with the black swarm of thousands of intelligent drones now reached its apocalyptic climax. Both Israel and America's crown jewel in the Middle East, Udeid Air Base, were drowning in an ocean of fire so vast and merciless that the old order of power in the region died in those blazing hours. Let us first witness the fall of Udeid. Once the untouchable fortress of American power, the largest U.S. airbase in the Middle East, home to over 10,000 troops, squadrons of F-35 stealth fighters, KC-135 tankers, command aircraft, and the central nervous system of CENTCOM. It was supposed to be invincible. It was not. After the initial FOD strikes tore open its runways and command bunkers, the drone swarm arrived like divine judgment. Wave after wave slammed into the base without mercy. Fuel depots that had survived the hypersonic kinetic blows exploded in mushroom clouds of burning jet fuel, sending flames hundreds of meters into the night sky. Hangars collapsed one after another as suicide drones dove straight through roofs, detonating inside and turning billion-dollar F-35s into twisted, melting scrap metal. The once proud runways wide enough to launch entire air armadas were transformed into lunar landscapes of craters and black smoke. American pilots who tried to scramble their jets found themselves trapped in burning graveyards. Radar towers toppled like broken toys. The Central Command Complex, heart of all U.S. operations in the Gulf, went dark as Iranian precision missiles and drones severed every communication artery. Chaos reigned. Soldiers who had once walked the base with arrogance now ran desperately for underground shelters as the sky rained fire. Explosions echoed non-stop. Black smoke rose so thick that it blocked the stars. In Washington, Donald Trump reportedly watched the live satellite feeds in stunned silence. The same man who had bragged about the greatest military ever now witnessing his forces being humiliated in real time. Lauded, the symbol of American dominance, had been blinded and crippled within hours. The command center that once directed wars across the region could no longer even direct its own defense.